Since Gabe and I were among the first, if not the first, to start a channel focused entirely on co-op reviews, I'd like to think we've carved out our place as the de facto co-op guys. I mean, sure, we've still got a long way to go, but scroll through our review playlist and you'll see we've probably covered and played more co-op games as a duo than like 99.9% of people over the past 5 years. But being the quote-unquote co-op guys means more than just keeping up with new releases, it means rounding out the backlog too. If we only ever played modern co-op titles, what would that say about our depth of knowledge of this niche? The problem is, as many of you know, this is not our day job, so most of our time goes into covering what's happening right now. It's just what we have to focus on. That's why when Gears of War Reloaded was announced, we both let out a sigh of relief. Finally, the perfect excuse to dive into a true co-op classic. Neither of us grew up with Xbox, so our only brushes with Gear, and Halo for that matter, were at friends' houses, which leaves a pretty sizable hole in our co-op backlog. With Gears E-Day right around the corner, it felt like the perfect time to go back and experience at least one of the originals. So with a rare open spot on our calendar, we jumped into Gears for the first time, on PlayStation no less, and that gave us a unique perspective. Not just reviewing it as a co-op game specifically, but reviewing it as two guys with zero nostalgia for the series. So let's get into it. Is Gears of War Reloaded worth playing today if you're brand new to the franchise, and is it a good co-op pick for you and your best friends? As always, we're going to start with ease of play, something that Xbox actually tends to nail. Gears of War Reloaded is fully playable with 2 players from start to finish, both online and local co-op across Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. Yes, they brought back split screen in 2025, and we couldn't be happier, even though we both ended up playing online. When you do play online, you've got both cross-play and full shared progression. So even though Gabe was the host for our campaign, I could hop into the campaign on my own time and pick up exactly where we left off. Not that I actually did that though. The only real differences as player 2 is that I played as Dom instead of Marcus. He controls the same, but Marcus is the decision maker in the duo. That meant whenever the campaign split us onto different paths, Gabe got to make that choice while I just stared at a static picture until he decided. Definitely one of those reminders that this is an older game, sometimes charming, sometimes frustrating, but more on that later. As for bugs or hiccups, there weren't many at all to speak of. One time Gabe got stuck behind a door and teleported to me, and the same happened to me at a gate, but overall things ran smooth. With that covered, let's get into the gameplay.
Hello. Oh, you asked for it, little dude.
You asked for it, guy.
In case you've never heard of the Gears series, let me quickly break down its gameplay and give a basic overview of its story. And as a total new guy to this world and its factions, I'm sure nothing will go wrong there. You play as Marcus Phoenix, a disgraced but legendary soldier of the COG armies, and his buddy Dom, who kind of underdelivers on his lines, but in a really endearing way that makes you love him anyways. Along the way, you're joined by Cole and Baird, who low-key kinda sucks, and together you're basically just trying to escape a war-torn, locust-riddled city, and honestly, that's kinda cool. It feels like a small story nestled inside a much larger one, and as someone who hasn't touched the rest of the series, I appreciated how this set up its world without ever over-explaining every detail. I still don't totally know who the locusts are, but I figure future titles will clear that up. Gameplay-wise, Gears is all about third-person shooting with a distinct cover mechanic that became the series' trademark. It wasn't the first cover shooter, and it certainly is not the last, but it's the one that everyone points to when they bring up the genre. The loop is simple but effective: dash from cover to cover, pop out to take shots, and work with your partner to lay down fire or flank enemies. And in true 2006 fashion, there are no RPG systems or loadouts here. You just pick up weapons and ammo as you go, which really adds to the streamlined, straightforward feel of the game. For a 6-hour campaign, they do a decent job of mixing things up: a weird boss fight here, a vehicle section there, or a cool twist like shooting gas canisters to keep swarms of light-fearing bat things off your back. Didn't really know what those were, but I did not like them. Some of those moments work better than others, but that's part of the fun, and also part of my bigger thoughts on the game. So next, I'll break down what I thought of the co-op experience, and then how it all holds up in 2025, and hopefully by the end of that you're gonna know if this is worth grabbing for you and your friend.
I'm flanking, I'm flanking. I got the guy in the window.
Nice,
I got the turret. Hell yeah, dude. That was sick, actually.
Wait, that was sick.
I picked open this door. So friggin' sick.
My thesis for the co-op experience here is basically this. Gears did some pretty cool stuff back in 2006 that still holds up today. As a cover shooter, the core loop is about flanking and suppressive fire. One of you pins the enemies down while the other sneaks around to finish the job. That happens naturally through the combat, but also intentionally through the level design. For example, Gabe immediately mastered the chainsaw bayonet on his assault rifle, an awkward melee option for me, but one he wielded like a complete lunatic. He'd sprint straight into the open, ripping enemies in half, and I'd hang back covering him because, well, someone had to keep him alive. The game also frequently splits you up, which I mentioned earlier, but some of those moments really impressed us. Sometimes one player gets sent to a balcony for an overhead view, while the other pushes forward on the ground, and it feels like the level was built with co-op in mind, even though this was still designed as a single player experience first. Then there are sequences like the car chase, which wasn't mechanically great, but gave us different roles. Gabe driving, me gunning, and that forced us to communicate and work together. And anytime a game lets us fill different roles, you know we're gonna love that. I don't want to overpraise it though, because a big part of why it worked so well for us is actually how simple it all was, and that simplicity is a huge part of my final thoughts, so let's just get into that.
Oh, shoot, dude. Damn. Take cover! Tom's delivery is so funny.
Okay, so the co-op mostly holds up, and we were impressed with what Gears was doing back in 2006. But there's a difference between being impressed, like you're staring at a relic in a history museum and thinking, you know, neat, they pulled this off back then, and then actually being impressed because you're genuinely having fun in 2025. That's the distinction I want to break down here. I probably buried the lead earlier by not mentioning that Reloaded sits firmly on the remaster side of the remaster or remake or reimagining spectrum. All the gameplay is intact with a hefty visual uplift. We did think the game looked great from lighting to textures. This looks like a modern gaming experience, even if the art direction and color palette is a bit drab. But visuals being the only real change means, yeah, this is a remaster through and through. And what that means, in the not so great sense, is you do notice the limitations of 2006 design. It can be a little bit frustrating at times, so let's cover some of those limitations. For example, levels sometimes felt too empty. We'd clear a few enemies, stand around wondering if more were coming, then get lost looking for the next objective because it wasn't clearly marked. Some areas looked primed for a big battle, but instead we just walked right through. Nowadays, I can appreciate and know that those are probably just clever loading screens, but in practice, it's a little bit boring. The AI is another clear reminder of the game's age. Here's one dude completely ignoring me while I dumped an entire clip into his face, or two enemies patiently waiting for an elevator to reach the bottom before attacking, so we dropped them before they even fired a bullet. Don't get me wrong, the game isn't necessarily too easy because the AI is bad, because we died plenty of times for being too aggressive. It's just that was on us for rushing in, not because the enemies were especially smart or challenging. And then there are the sequences that split up the core cover shooter loop, but don't really work anymore. Like one boss we had to lure through hallways before hitting it with a giant laser, failed to do it exactly how the game wants, and boom, mission failed, started all over. It's through quick, maybe just 5 minutes, but it wasn't fun. And there were a few of those moments that I can confidently say were not fun. I won't spoil it here, but we did not enjoy that final boss. However, while those old game limitations occurred on a number of occasions, I'd say they don't outweigh the ways that playing an old game like this actually made for a positive experience too. For example, you get the hilarious relic of an old school shooter, namely the writing and line delivery. As I've mentioned, my personal favorite was Dom, who I swear is untouched from the original. He delivers these action schlop one-liners as flatly as humanly possible, and Gabe and I lost it every time. The whole script feels very early 2000s in tone, blunt and unintentionally funny in a way that added to the charm of the experience. Which brings me to another positive, and really my final point overall. The simplicity of Gears is kind of what makes it fun. Gabe and I play so many co-op games with deep RPG systems and puzzle mechanics or high-stakes communication that it was just refreshing to kick back on the couch with a straightforward campaign shooter. Sometimes you don't need synergy builds or elaborate strategies, you just want to chainsaw grunts in half and blow up stuff with your buddy. That's what Reloaded ultimately is, and that's why we ended up enjoying it. Despite the blemishes, if you're like us and want to finally try the series, I'd say go for it, especially since it's an easy download on GamePass. At $40, I think think it's priced fairly, especially if you're planning to play local co-op, but without a friend pass for online play, the cost essentially doubles, and that's where I'd maybe wait for a sale, unless you're interested in diving into the multiplayer mode, which admittedly we didn't check out. Again, the campaign only takes like 6 hours, so you don't want to overspend on that time. But if you just want to order some pizza, crack open a couple beers, and play something simple with a friend after a long work week, Gears of War Reloaded is a surprisingly nice companion, even in 2025.
Okay guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. We hopefully helped you figure out if Gears of War Reloaded was for you. It's got some old school blemishes, but ultimately we had a good time with it and it kind of impressed us at moments. We have a handful of reviews that we're working on all at once, so if I'm being honest, I don't know the exact order they're going to be dropped in, so I'll just say that you should be sure to subscribe to keep up with all the latest co-op releases. We'd love to have you here at the channel. Shout out to our patrons, we appreciate your support, and we'll catch everyone on the next episode of the Co-op Bros.